So this is now the presentation about the benefits, which comes too late, of course, because people are hungry for the benefits. That's why I had this one slide about the benefits earlier on, and that this would give more detail. It's hard to put this slideshow to the right place. I mean, we tried different patterns, and there are disadvantages. If you put this right in the beginning, people, don't know what you're talking about. So, in a certain way, you have to start with the bigger picture first, and then go to the specifics. Or that's at least I couldn't find a solution to this yet. So. This is now more about the CEF.AT system, not entirely, but first of all, there should be again this explanation of the distinction of what is the difference between CEF.AT and the CEF automated translation, and that the CEF.AT is the starting point, it's the current system, but we want to arrive at something that has more functionalities and gives better quality and is integrated to the CEF DSIs. Okay, then this is a little bit of a technical slide, and I'm not convinced this is very useful. It's about the different interactions between the member states, and maybe this helps to understand what kind of interactions there are in the CEF digital services. But on the other hand, this is maybe too abstract and too general. I rather would take an example than to have this kind of generality. Now that we start to have more and more real examples of digital services with all these players, but instead of showing this picture, maybe showing a picture of a e-health scenario, exchanging patient information, or something more concrete. And then, so this is about the vision, but I think this part could be enriched with examples, as I said earlier, so that this is maybe this is just a slide that is displayed, and then there was description verbally about different situations, different cases. But again, this was basically to save time, but it actually might be a better idea to inject 2 or 3 slides on more concrete cases. And then it comes to the role of machine translation and the different use situations for machine translation. So, so one is access to information, and then understanding information received. So somebody addresses to you and you don't know what is in there. And very important for all online services is to make possible having multilingual web services or websites, and not only statical websites with a tree-like structure, but including the functionalities and including the dynamic content of the website. Very important point, something that is to keep in mind, that the CEF automated translation is not only about machine translation, it's also about enabling cross-lingual information search and analytics. And maybe the most striking example we can take from the need for cross-lingual search. I mean, the need arises in many contexts, but the Europeana Digital Library. How do you find among these 20 million objects in the Europeana Digital Library the only way to find something is through search. And to make the search work across languages, it is a big challenge, partly because the metadata that has been used to describe the objects in the library is not standardized and it's not optimal. But this is part of the challenge of the CEF automated translation. Machine translation is one enabler, so it's even an enabler for cross-lingual search because it can translate metadata. It can, and it can also translate search queries to other languages, but it's not the only technology. So then there is this different use types for machine translation, and so the different users and the different uses of machine translation, so that I use it because I need to make sense of some documents I found. And then the other half is that I do understand both the source and the target languages, but I want to use it to speed up my translation, to have a raw translation that I will work on, or that I'm not actually a translator, but I'm an expert that I want to create some sort of white paper for my purposes and improve it by other means, using it as a basis for my analysis for my own authorship. So this was just to demonstrate that there are different uses. It's not only for document production. It can be for many different uses. Then the details, many people will be interested in how can I use the current existing machine translation system. I'm not interested in the DSIs or European or e-health. I don't care when they become multilingual, but I have texts that I need to translate. So then there is more information about the CEF.AT system. And I will not go into the detail. By the way, this presentation is ideally presented by somebody from the DGT team, so Spiros Pilos or his colleagues. Now I presented it in Berlin because I was the only Commission representative there. But the purpose is that after this presentation, there can be questions and discussion about the CEF.AT system. How can I obtain the connection, and how secure is it? And for my sensitive and delicate texts, and all kinds of technical questions. And then this might be the place for the demo of the system, online demo of the system. Now I only have screenshots of the system here. I don't have a live demo here, so I will just flash this through. And then very often we ask it who is allowed to use CEF.AT. And here it was initially the European institutions, but now it's all the public administration in all the EU countries and the EEA countries that can obtain connection, user account to the system. Also, there was question about the data on which CEF.AT system has been built on. So as I said earlier, it is much more than just the European legislation as it is published in EURLEX. It is also the internal texts that have never been published, and they are contained in a system called Euramis. It's the easy translators working environment, basically. And it was also said here earlier that, well, is the MT@EC system trained on legislation? Yes, primarily. It is mostly translated on directives, regulations, and decisions. But it not only, because especially in this EURAMIS, so contrary to the public EURLEX corpus, the EURAMIS contains more diverse text types, like speeches of the commissioner, or speech of the director general, translated in different languages, or letters received from a member state in an exotic language that has been translated then to one of the working languages of the Commission. So in the EURAMIS you will find more variety than just the legislation. Committee documents that never appear published, but there's still large volume of documents. So then we give instructions how you can obtain access to the MT@EC system. Then, as it was demonstrated in the previous presentation, in my previous presentation, now the whole point in CEF is to make the machine translation serve or plug it in to online systems. And here we are not starting from scratch, because MT@EC has already been plugged into these online systems. I mentioned IMI earlier, but it is also introduced or being introduced in Solvit, NLEX, and Circa BC. And this is mostly repetition of the main things. So compared to MT@EC, what does the CEF automated translation bring? So compared to MT@EC, it will be faster, because now you have to wait half a minute or up to several minutes before you have your text, even a sentence returned by the system. It's obvious that the system must be faster. So in CEF.AT we will make it faster and more secure, so to translate sensitive text, because many of the use situations require quick translation of sensitive the text that contain personal data that have to be handled quickly and securely. And then, of course, the vision part of it is the pan-European public online services, better quality of translation in general. So it came out several times here that many of you have tested MT@EC, even evaluated it, and realized that in many cases the result is not good enough for your purposes. We would not have this CEF program if it was good enough already. So that's the purpose why we are here, actually. So, but I know it's frustrating, but that's actually, in the sense, positive for our efforts. It's the very justification that we are doing this work. And that since MT@EC is targeted to the general domain, let's say the European administrative document type, we have to move to a better translation, adapted translation of specific domains. And the specific domains are the ones that appear in the different CEF digital services. Now, there is maybe in the future, maybe in the next round of workshop, maybe not in this one, but the ones that we will be doing in 2017, we will have real examples of the use cases and how does the text look like. Now we are just rather generally referring to, well, the use types of the e-health or the Europeana, but it's obvious this is not sufficient. We need actually to go to a more analytic and actually analytic view of what exactly are the text types and the use context. And we are about to conclude a study on this, the specific requirements of the CEF-DSIs. What are the linguistic requirements? But the results of that study will only be available in February next year. So the study is still ongoing. Okay, this is a bit long, so I will just leave it here because this was the end of the presentation. So you get the idea of what this presentation is about. Any questions?
Just a remark is that one of the benefits which I see for Maltese, which may apply to other languages and may not, concerns, you're assuming always that the speakers in a given country can speak and write their language effectively, which is not necessarily the case. And one of our problems we have in Malta is that Maltese speakers are not necessarily very good at writing it. So a potential benefit here is which makes use of monolingual models, is the which comes from the data which we're collecting, is the possibility of actually improving the quality of the Maltese that they write.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. So that the use scenario might be different in different countries, even for the same services. Yeah. Yes. Okay. That's a good point. Yes.
Just sort of thinking, I wanted to share some of my thinking with you about the Norwegian conference, because I would think at this point it would be interesting to have a Norwegian coming up and saying, well, I have used this, even if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter, because you have this presentation where you say it's operational since 2013, okay, so there must be some users there, and I think it would strengthen the whole workshop if we saw some of them. So
yeah, and this is where, again, different countries are different, because some are very advanced. In France, for example, there has been already a sizable use and even systematic methodologic evaluation of the MT&TC system. Other countries, it has not been widely used. It is a novelty. So this presentation will have to be adapted to the situation. This presentation here was for the newcomers, those probably who have not been heavily using the MT&TC system.
I believe in your previous presentation you mentioned that one of the ideas was also to include post-editing. Is the idea here to also, for example, not only to deliver an MT engine to the countries, to the public institutions, but maybe some kind of environment in which they can also post-edit, and maybe the post-edits could again be fed to the MT engine? Or because this is, I don't think that many translators will be tempted to believe the MT output if they have still a role to play in correcting this MT and output, and maybe to have some quality estimate of each sentence in order to boost this correction process. I think it might be much more interesting for them to also use this.
Yes, yes. So here again, experience in the DGT, and now I have to speak with their voice, is that the different translators take the post-editing task very, very differently, and some refuse to do any post-editing. Some others systematically use MT as their, producing their basis and working on that. There are individual variations, and there are variations between the language communities. For some language communities, it's probably because the output for some language pairs is better, so that the post-editing is more popular for languages where you have a good quality output. Typically, English as a target language has the best quality scores, so the English translators in the Commission use machine translation quite a lot, because it can, for them, it can actually be boosting their efficiency quite a lot. For other languages, it is still not the case. It's not really. It's not at the stage where it would make the translation much faster. So that's why there are different attitudes towards post-editing. Now, this was for using the MTATC, using it for document translation, that use scenario. If you are using the MTATC for the DSIs of the CEF, then of course we have to be realistic. Is the quality high enough that can we put online what comes out from the system? If we cannot, then something has to be post-edited, something has to be done. So, like I'm not at this point. I'm not asking anybody to close their eyes about the imperfections of the quality. So we cannot pretend that we will just pipe the automated translations to the website, so the different strings get translated automatically, and then people start using that website. It's not going to happen like that, of course. Everything needs to be validated by skilled humans. But to what extent is post-editing part of the CEF DSI validation procedure? We will see. I mean, that's something we don't yet have the answers, but there is certainly very significant human validation, verification element in any case.
Maybe just to add, I completely agree, and I think it's a really interesting thought. So we should minute that, and for going into the future, I think it's a nice way of also formally engaging the translators, of making the result of their efforts useful back to the system. And there's the MATE-CAT system and other European funded projects that have provided very mature support technology specifically for post-editing. So I think it's a really interesting thought, and we'll keep that, and thank you for that.
Because exactly it allows doing the corrections for the same mistake only once. So once you have corrected them once, the system learns that, okay, this was wrong, I will not make the same mistake again. So this MATE-CAT that Josef mentioned, it is to enable this kind of incremental learning of the system.
Can you provide any cases where you can say, okay, we have this language, and we have this system, and we added the performance is like this, and then we added these and these and these texts, and after that the performance has improved by this and that. I mean, these cases are there, and some of them might just be helpful. One slide or two slides, we say we did this and that. For some languages, it probably exists. It might be blue scores. It might be whatever. Maybe from the French.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Yes.
It's two slides, the generic ones that I will show you. I think this is a valid point, because you said it's operational since 2013. And we'll be in 2016, so it's 3 years, you know. And then afterwards you said, no, it's not working for your language yet. Blah, blah, blah. So it's something about the presentation, about what is it actually you made operational, and what is available, you know. So it's a discrepancy here between what I see and what I hear afterwards.
Maybe just very quickly, because we're jumping to the next presentation. So it's been available since 2013, but some languages are just very, very difficult. The ones that are morphologically, that are morphologically rich, that because of this morphological richness have also very free word order there, and it's partly all about the data, because in the limited data you never see the whole variation that the language allows. You only see a tiny part of that space, and then these machine learning based systems are just going to be very bad. And that's why the human translators don't like them, because they're too bad. But the amount of data is the same as for some of the other systems that are where between closer languages or so, you get very good results.
So the 2013 was the date when the system was released for the users. So before that, there was already a release to pilot users. Yes. Yes.
For some.
Yeah. So it was a sort of, it was a release date.
In one of the slides that Spiros shows very often, we see the quantity of data. We see the quantity of the data per language, and I think he has some figures, and we should have that slide in the presentation because it's very
and maybe also
illustrative.
the quality scores. So there's this matrix which shows.
I think this might motivate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it might show that we needed more Norwegian over Swedish.
Yes.
Or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.